So we knew that there was a push for the release of the JFK files. And I forewarned people that these files are not going to be released without some type of redaction, right? And that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm going to go through some of the important pieces of those files that I think you should see. There was only one part in particular that I did not know about. I was surprised by, but the other information that has been, circulating around the interwebs, we already knew about. I knew about it. You knew about it if you saw my interview with Rick Sterling, and I'll get into that as well. Long story short, most of this information was information that already existed on the internet anyway, but I do want to show you what they tried to hide. Let's go ahead and get into that. It's really interesting, folks. Shout out to Hotspot. They did a whole thread for this. They're doing the damn thing. From the recent JFK file dump. Look at this here. CIA has no objection to declassification and or release of CIA information in this document except brackets. So we will look at the brackets. The first bracket here, the Israeli Intelligence Service. So do you see this bracket right here? CIA directors permitted Angleton to run several intelligence projects, many of them with the Israeli Intelligence Service. So we'll go a little bit further here and you'll see what they did not want released. The CIA request mentions of Israel to be redacted from the JFK files. And that's all the circles here. Like I can dive in, but you guys probably can't see it from where you're sitting. But all of these red circles that you see include the word Israel or Israelis. They did not want that information, anything about Israel, to be released from those JFK files. Now, that wasn't surprising to me because of the information that Rick Sterling discovered and he put in his Mint Press News article. JFK was heavily against Israel having nuclear weapons. He was not fond of the nuclear program that they were developing at that point in time. JFK wanted the Zionists of America. Back then, it wasn't called AIPAC. He wanted it to establish itself as a foreign entity. And JFK also was very concerned about what Zionism was going to become. So it's not surprising to me that they redacted that information, right? I also want you to question the timing, right? And we talked about this with Chris Smalls earlier. Don't you think it's interesting that they decided to release the JFK files during the same time that Israel ended the ceasefire and killed all those people in Gaza a couple days ago? So that then your focus would be on this, which is why I didn't cover that story right away. I said, no, we're going to cover what Israel just did. Your focus would be on this so that you're distracted by that and you're not focused on what Israel just did in Gaza and that they killed more kids. This is interesting. Let's go on here and check this out. JFK files also confirm a pipeline between the CIA and Israeli intelligence, personally overseen by CIA counterintelligence chief James Angleton. And here's a picture of him here. Again, you'll see the red bracket here where it says Israel here. Again, that's something that they don't want in the information. But what it says here is that, as you are aware, James Angleton of CIA frequently turns over to the Bureau on a highly confidential basis information which has been developed through operations headed by Angleton. So this gentleman here, you need to know about. And then also here, more information where you can see it says the Israeli intelligence. Once again, in 1954, a procedure was approved hereby we could attribute certain information received from James Angleton, CIA, under the symbol Bureau Informant 100. So that's what they're highlighting here, right? So remember, like they have ways of infiltrating, right? It goes on to say JFK Jr. called Joe Biden a traitor. So this is what I did not know about. This was a surprise to me, and I'll show you that piece right here. It is circled and highlighted. It says the envelope was postmarked for Worcester, Massachusetts, 1994, bearing the handwritten, hand-printed address, Senator Joseph Biden, Delaware, U.S. Capitol Building. It goes on to say here, accompanying handwritten/hand-printed letter dated August 26, 1994, beginning, "Dear Senator Biden, you are a traitor," and bearing the signature, John F. Kennedy Jr. So I did not know about that. And we all know JFK Jr. died very young in a plane crash. I don't know. I've always had this belief that maybe the Kennedys were cursed in some way, shape, or form, but JFK Jr. died in a plane crash with his wife at that point. Just kind of came out of nowhere. Seemed weird to me at the time, but I felt like Kennedy's just had bad luck. The newly released JFK files reveal how the CIA's covert war in Cuba intertwined with Kennedy's assassination. A Cuban consul in Chile suspected from the start that the CIA or the US government had orchestrated JFK's murder to justify a renewed assault on Cuba, likening it to main incident that led to the Spanish-American War. Fidel Castro himself worried Kennedy's death would result in a hardline shift under LBJ, escalating tensions. So here we go into the Cuba expose. The files also expose Operation Mongoose, a CIA campaign to destabilize Cuba through economic sabotage, including plans to destroy crops and establish torture facilities in Opa-locka, Florida. Documents reference a stay-behind network in Cuba, suggesting that long-term infiltration efforts. Meanwhile, the CIA operatives were spreading misinformation in the immediate aftermath of Kennedy's murder, attempting to frame Cuba as responsible. These revelations make it clear the Cold War playbook was already in motion. Kennedy's death just accelerated it. So, long story short, as you can see here, the CIA basically escalated, right? Created a lot of these tensions. It goes on. There's more. There's more. Again, thank you to Hotspot. JFK files discuss the CIA created false flag offices in South America. So here's another one. This is crazy, right? It goes on to say here, this is a cable, Mr. Phillips, dated September 20th, 1970, and it is signed by yourself and Mr. Bro. And it is sent to the station in Chile, and it contains the following about the purpose of setting up the false flag office. Mr. Phillips, we call it a base. False flag bases. Each member of the base will enter and leave Chile with false documents and operate as a representative of his country rather than as an American. So do you see how the CIA just basically came in and started all this? This is the thing, and it said top secret, but apparently it's not top secret anymore. JFK files reveal the use of false flag persons as a regular part of operations. Wow. Highlights here. So the use of false flag persons, at least judging from this cable, is something repeatedly done by the CIA, question mark. Mr. Phillips here says yes, and by all intelligence services, not all, but all major intelligence services. If you are living overseas and a man comes up to you and says, hey, I see you are a Marxist, and a man comes up and says, I am from Havana and we would like to work with you with the Cuban intelligence service, he might not be from Havana. He might be from the Soviets, from us, or from the Brazilians. So it is not an unusual practice. And this speaks to infiltration and organizing spaces as well. This is why I say, like, remember, the Black Panthers were infiltrated. There was infiltration in the civil rights movement. There's been infiltration in all organizations, and you never really know if people are who they say that they are. But there's kind of some key giveaways, right? Like that one right there. I'm just going to walk up to someone and say, hey, are you a Marxist? Yeah, red flag. It's been happening for years. And they'll look like normal people. They usually don't talk like normal people. That's kind of the big giveaway. But they look like just everyday people. You'd be surprised sometimes. It goes on to say here, the older JFK drop from 2017 reveals a plot to perform a false flag on the U.S. using a fake Soviet aircraft to justify war with the USSR. Everybody see this? So I want you to think about this when you continue to hear about the anti-Russia propaganda. I want you to think about that. So even back then, they were trying to justify going to war. This is highlighted. You guys may not be able to see it as well, but I can. There is a possibility that such aircraft could be used in a deception operation designed to confuse enemy planes in the air to launch a surprise attack against enemy installations, or in a provocation operation in which the Soviet aircraft would appear to attack the US or friendly installations in order to provide an excuse for the US intervention. So, just another example of the CIA staging acts of war to give the United States an excuse to intervene. There's more. This part right here, the JFK files reveal a State Department official approved Lee Harvey Oswald 1962 return from the Soviet Union, authorized by two officials, including State Department legal officer Abram Chase, a figure with deep connections to Archibald Roosevelt Jr. and covert NSC 54112-2 operations. Chase, who had clearance for secret talks, was later accused by Representative Francis Walter of being soft on communism and potentially exposing FBI and CIA intel to Soviet sympathizers through passport policies. So here's another example here. You're finding out a little bit more about Lee Harvey Oswald, right? And his return. Let's go on here. JFK files reveal CIA discussions on using Cambodian dissident Son Ngoc, I'm not sure how to pronounce last name, in a political campaign against Prince Sihanouk, stating that Taiwan's government explored Thon's potential to infiltrate Cambodia's leadership and assassinate Sihanouk, citing a CIA source in Saigon. Additionally, the document describes a CIA-led psychological warfare operation aimed at weakening communist forces by dropping 70,000 propaganda leaflets over North Vietnam to spread confusion. So again, also heavily involved in anti-communism movement. Also, don't forget about McCarthyism, how that was spreading in the United States. Again, they are literally going in and causing the chaos that they claim these countries caused on their own. This has been happening for a long time, folks, a long time. It goes on to say here, a CIA memo reveals that Agent Oliver H. Corbuston joined and infiltrated peace groups, specifically the Catholic Association for International Peace, to gather intel on their Negotiating Now initiative. The agency obtained internal documents and monitored CAIP's 40th conference at Dunbarton College in DC, with all findings sent to headquarters as part of Cold War intelligence operations. So this part right here, Mr. Oliver, who joined and infiltrated peace groups, one of them being the Catholic Association for International Peace. There is a documentary that you should watch if you haven't seen it. It's called the Chicago 7. I want to say Chicago 7. Chicago 7. But it's about the activists that were on trial for protesting outside of the DNC convention back in the 60s. Is everybody familiar with this situation? Well, anyway, the police escalated the situation at the protests. Like, again, I said, they've been doing this. It's not new. They escalated that situation. And in turn, it was said that the protesters were the ones who basically came in and were violent and all that. But that's not what, you guys know how this works. During that time, those protests that happened outside the DNC convention, even those activists that organized during that time, there were people that infiltrated those organizations as well. There were multiple organizations that appeared to protest outside the DNC convention in the 1968. Yes, thank you, Sakina, 1968 convention. And the FBI and the CIA, the alphabet letter agencies, they had people come in to pretend to be activists and say they want to get involved and be volunteers, but they were actually agents. It's happened over and over again, right? There's always infiltration. So there's that, which I thought was interesting. And they have the actual document here enclosed, right? So it says it here. The above items were received from Oliver, who joined the CAIP for cover purposes. So see, there it is right there. Blatantly as day. A Russian source to the U.S. officials claims knew in advance that Oswald would act on Kennedy in Dallas and that MLK would also be assassinated. The U.S. did nothing to prevent this from happening. The same source later claimed the FBI drugged him to induce amnesia. So here's another one. A Russian source to the U.S. officials claims that he knew in advance that Oswald would act on Kennedy and that MLK would be assassinated. Okay, but the big kicker here is that the government didn't intervene, and that's because they were part of it. I mean, think about it. Who really went after MLK? Who really wanted MLK gone? So these are things to obviously pay close attention to. So that's as far as we got. Now, what's interesting about all this, Ben Shapiro had something very interesting to say about these JFK files. Listen to his response about this. People are making fun of this left and right. Watch.
Sort of conspiracy theorizing that's become incredibly popular on the right these days. It was popular on the left, and now it's become increasingly popular on the right. The kind of, let's just ask questions. We'll ask who really killed JFK? Wink, wink, nod, nod. And then you're like, well, do you have any evidence of the thing that you are presupposing? Well, no, I'm not making any accusations. I just know I don't believe the story that I'm being told. I know not to trust the authorities. Like, well, that's fine, but do you have like any evidence? Like evidence, not just supposition. I said, well, you're part of it, aren't you? You're part of it. The reason that you're so defensive about all this is, I don't care who killed JFK. I mean, I do, because it's really interesting, but I noticed that the calendar says 2025 and he was killed in 1963. And so my opinion about who killed JFK has about as much relevance as who killed William McKinley, or James Garfield, which is to say not an enormous amount.
So Ben Shapiro is not interested, right? And that's fine. You don't have to be interested, but he doesn't care who killed JFK because it was a long time ago. A lot of things happened a long time ago, including one historical event that you talk about quite often, Ben. What do you mean? I don't care about this because it happened a long time ago. Maybe Ben doesn't care about it because he knows that it would implicate Israel. Maybe that's why Ben doesn't care about it, right? The Daily Wire is really falling off, man. It's some crazy stuff going on over there. But Rick Sterling did talk about this. I want to play a little bit of this. When I interviewed journalist Rick Sterling, a lot of these things that were revealed in these JFK files, Rick Sterling did discuss this in his article, which I'll make sure I put the link in the chat so you can read on your own. But he also discussed it on here. Listen to this part.
That at that time, the State Department policy was to support UN Resolution 194, providing the right of return for Palestinian refugees. And looking into it more, I learned out that the JFK Department of Justice was insisting that the Zionist of America organization, which is the parent of AIPAC, it was insisting that they need to register as foreign agents with the U.S. And not only that, relations with Egyptian President Nasser. JFK wanted good relations there. So it was kind of a revelation to me to learn the extent of the commitment there. At that time, the U.S. provided zero weaponry to Israel. They provided food aid. So these were all things that they were new to me, and I think they're new to many people. And it was a critical time. And then subsequently, everything changed after JFK died.
Everything changed after JFK died. So what Rick Sterling was referencing there, again, it's all in his article. A lot of these files that you're seeing online were already published in Rick Sterling's article. He already had some of those pages published. That's why I said I didn't think I was going to really hear anything new here. But what he was saying is that, yeah, JFK did want that organization to register as a foreign agent. And he goes on to say a lot more during that interview. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's called Rick Sterling, JFK Supported Palestinian Rights. That was another thing that was discussed. But that article here, which you can still find online by Rick Sterling. Again, you can support them here. This is Mint Press News. The article is called From Dallas to Gaza, the JFK assassination was good for Zionist Israel. So if you get an opportunity, read that article. But one of the things I will show you, I just want you to see this for yourself. It's a long article. It goes into a lot of detail. And again, all the people who went through those files, because the files were over 80,000 pages or something. You could have gotten most of that information from this article here that Rick wrote. And notice how this is what I was going to show you. Even in the article, these pages that you're seeing floating around online, these pages were already published in Rick's article here, right? You can see it says right here. At this hour, however, I feel it is my duty to turn to you because recent events have increased the danger of a serious convulsion in the Middle East, and I have adversely affected Israel's security. So it goes into all of that here. So check that out when you get a chance. Corey, can you put the link to that article in the chat for everyone? But it's probably a lot easier for you if you just read that article by Rick Sterling instead of sorting through all of those different tweets, all of those different tweets on X. If you just read the article, you can kind of get the gist of what was happening there. But yeah, man. I mean, it's just, I said do your job because, again, obviously quite a bit of people were upset that it was clear they wanted Israel to be redacted. And some people were also upset that there was any redaction at all. And yeah, I mean, I expected it to be redacted. I did expect that. But I think a lot of people are saying right now to Kash Patel and the rest of them, do your job, because this is not what we asked for. Crazy times, folks. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.